Where are you? The ceremony is starting. I yelled into the phone after finally getting a hold of my husband, Kevin. I'm on a family trip in France. What about our daughter's wedding? When I said that, Kevin simply laughed and then hung up the phone. Family, huh? I repeat these thoughts in my mind. I stared at the disconnected phone for a while, but quickly shifted my mood and reached out to someone else. Regarding the matter I had asked you about before, I need it done as soon as possible, so please start now. I said assertively. Yes, I'll leave everything in your hands, please start immediately. Certainly. A lively voice responded from the other end. The person is from a civil engineering company that has been close to my family for years. And I thought to myself while trying to suppress a laugh. Go ahead, enjoy yourself now. Enjoy your so-called family trip. I think this will be your last pleasure. My name is Linda, I'm 52 years old. A housewife with 2 children. My husband, Kevin, is 55. Our marriage was a kind of political arrangement about 30 years ago now, a partnership between our companies. But this marriage life is likely to end soon. Because of Kevin's repeated issues. Not that there were signs of separation from the beginning. At least, I intended to build a great family with Kevin, despite our marriage being primarily for business alignment. Kevin felt the same at the time. That changed after our 2 children were born. Shortly after the marriage, I gave birth to our first child, Joe. The following year, our daughter, Anna, was born. I was happy to have children, but parenting was harder than I imagined. At that time, Kevin, still in his early 30s, was under training at his father's company. Perhaps that's why he accumulated a lot of stress. Even when he returned home, he did not participate in childcare. Despite seeing me overwhelmed by the cries of our 2 children, he did nothing. Rather, it seemed he grew indifferent and started spending more time away from home using work as an excuse. Well, honestly, I have my own regrets too. Back then, I was overwhelmed with childcare but was convinced I could manage it without anyone's help. The one who helped me was my mother. My parents are no longer with us, but I'm deeply grateful for their support during that time. If it hadn't been for the housekeeper my mother arranged, I would have been depressed. But once that period was over, the children were truly adorable. With Kevin often not returning from parents or his work, parenting became my purpose in life. Growing suspicious of Kevin's constant absences, I once asked him, "Where do you always go?" At the time, Kevin dodged the question with vague answers, but when he didn't join our children's birthdays, I finally asked him. His response was, "You can do whatever you want with your side? I have other things I have to do." I couldn't understand what he was talking about. What could be so important that you'd miss your children's events? I snapped at him that time. And Kevin's reply was, "You know I have a younger sister, right?" "Yes, she's 13 years younger, was it Sophia?" "Yes, that's right, Sophia. She's having her coming-of-age ceremony soon, so I need to discuss some things with my parents about it." He was putting his sister ahead of his children, and I couldn't help but say, "Are you kidding?" I was so angry. But as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Kevin told me, "You've been so wrapped up with the kids and ignoring me that you probably didn't realize, but she's been having a tough time too." I was left speechless by his response. Yet, this kind of incident became more frequent. He has even started to use his sister as an excuse to refuse to come to his own children's events, but would go to her coming-of-age ceremony. He would miss his children's school ceremonies but make it to Sophia's graduation. Where on earth is home for Kevin, and who is his family? I have thought that many times. And so, I celebrated our children's birthdays, and attended kindergarten and school ceremonies alone. In the children's commemorative photos, their father's presence faded away. Eventually, they also realized that their father didn't participate in their events. Later, as they faced exams, further studies, and job hunting, they proceeded to make their own decisions without consulting us first. Both of them would first find what they wanted to do, then look for schools that matched their interests and decide if they could apply. Their consultations with me were merely asking, "I want to go here, what do you think?" I remember my daughter saying as early as middle school, "Because I don't want to burden you." Having clear goals isn't a bad thing. It probably indicates a strong sense of independence. Yet, it makes me sad that they've learned not to rely on us as they saw their father has been unreliable. I hardly set a good example myself. Because I've been a housewife since we got married. I was sometimes involved in his family business though. My parents also wanted to leave me some kind of asset early on, and my brother was also in favor of that. My parents passed away 10 years ago. They were still in their 70s. The company went into the hands of my brother, James, and I was given some other assets through the inheritance. As to Kevin's younger sister, Sophia, whom he took care of in every way, was spoiled by her parents and him. Graduated her college and got a job at a subsidiary company through her father's connections. But it seemed she was never really committed to her job. After working for 2 years, she quit, claiming it was time to prepare for marriage. Apparently, she never liked working in the first place and ended up living a leisurely life at home. And neither her parents nor her brother, Kevin, said anything about it. They seemed rather pleased with her for not working, as they thought she couldn't work anyway. After that, she actively participated in matchmaking dates, but for some reason, they always ended up broken off. And the main reason, it turns out, was mostly because of Kevin's opposition. Whenever Kevin opposed, Sophia would simply accept it, saying, "If you say so." Before I knew it, she was already in her 40s. I heard she's still unmarried and just chilling around, not really moving forward with her life. Her parents are now in their 80s. Unlike my parents who passed away early, they're still physically strong and active, but normally, one would still worry about them. Yet, Sophia does nothing and continues to live freely. Since his father is still healthy and remains the president of the company, there's no sign of Kevin taking over as president. Although Kevin might want to take over the role of president soon, his father is not ready to step down. I don't know the reasons behind this. I had long since grown tired of Kevin's behavior. My brother and his wife even suggested that it might be best to break up after our children were independent. And I was thinking of starting a second phase of my life. Fortunately, my parents had transferred a considerable estate to me early on. With that, I could either start something new or take a break for a while. I've been thinking about it for a long time. And I was gathering evidence to be in a favorable position for the divorce. My brother's lawyer had been advising me on this matter. But an event occurred that put these discussions on hold. It turns out that our daughter Anna was getting married. Her partner, 8 years older than her, was a senior employee at my brother's company where she worked. This man was quite capable and was rumored to be transferred to an overseas branch soon. Interestingly, Anna, having seen Sophia as a cautionary tale, never disclosed her familial ties at work. It's foolish to flaunt such things. Even at school, you know, people don't like it when you show off being wealthy. That was her point. I have tried to tell Kevin about the wedding. But as expected, Kevin only talked about how busy he was and would quickly flee from the conversation. I just responded with a, "Oh, is that so?" I still informed him of the date and the venue. But I made no particular effort to confirm his availability. And then, on the day of the wedding, we all headed to the wedding venue. But that morning, there was no sign of him showing up. I tried contacting Kevin. "Where are you? The ceremony is starting. I'm on a family trip in France." I blinked at his response. "What about our daughter's wedding?" Kevin just laughed and then hung up the phone. I sighed and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds. "Family, huh? Family." I repeated it several times in my mind. Maybe the trip to France was with his parents and Sophia. Although I knew it, but I was truly astounded to see it go this far. To Kevin, family meant his parents and Sophia, not us. Of course, I've known this for a long time. I had no expectations from a marriage of convenience. He probably thought the same. The difference was, I initially tried to make it work. But he didn't. It was for the sake of the children that I've been doing this for over 20 years. The children themselves might have thought they didn't need a father. Yet, I wanted to maintain a certain degree of public presence until they became adults. That might have been just my own selfishness. The children might have thought it was much easier without such thing. Well, it's all right. I sighed and dialed the phone again. To the somewhat distant voice on the other line, I said, "Hello, it's me." "Yes, Linda. Regarding the matter I had asked you about before. I need it done as soon as possible, so please start now." I spoke forcefully. "Yes, I leave everything in your hands, please start immediately." "Certainly." I heard a very lively voice from the other side of the line. The person I was speaking to was from a civil engineering and construction company that had been close to my family for a long time. And I thought to myself while trying to suppress a laugh. Go ahead, enjoy yourself now. Enjoy your so-called family trip. I think this will be your last pleasure. Then, a month later, I received a call. I received the call on my tablet. On the screen appeared a lawyer with a full of smile. "So, have the documents been processed already?" I couldn't help but sound excited. "Yes, I've taken care of everything necessary." This lawyer over the screen is a person employed by my family's company. I continued, asking him, "Can you tell me what has happened over these past 2 weeks? I thought you might ask, so I've prepared everything." I smiled happily at the lawyer on the screen. Right now, there is distance between the lawyer and me. Yes, I have bought a house and am living in Italy. This move happened because Anna's husband, who she married, had been transferred to an overseas branch, as had been mentioned before. Anna said, he was worried about my language skills. "But you know," she continued, "you never know until you try, and once you're there, things work out. So, it's fine. I've always managed somehow." Anna and her husband are now based in the Italian branch. And I live in a separate building on the premises of their new home. It serves the dual purpose of living close and enhancing security. The lawyer I'm seeing on the screen seems to be adjusting some equipment. First, this. He then showed me what had happened during Kevin and his family's trip to France. "Wait a minute, why can't we stay at this hotel today?" So exclaims my father-in-law, who is wearing an ever-brightly colored shirt. "I'm sorry, but today the hotel is reserved for a wedding and its reception." "What? This hotel, the best in France?" Yes, the wedding in France was Anna and her husband's. Kevin and his family had flown from the US to the Bordeaux area, but by that time, we had already headed directly to Paris. Our plan was to enjoy a leisurely resort stay before the wedding. They were completely unaware of this. I still contacted them on the day of the event, just in case. It's ridiculous they didn't even know we were in France. It just shows how little interest they had in us. "It's strange, isn't it?" the lawyer said. "Linda, you did inform them of the destination, right?" "I did, through postcard and message. I don't usually get through to them." So the fact that he picked up the phone on the wedding day was probably just to show off their family trip. The lawyer chuckled at that. I made sure to state that the wedding would be held at this hotel in France. But what's wrong with them? Coming up to the hotel and saying they can't stay there? They could at least have said they were there to attend the wedding, he added. In the video footage, we saw them being abusive to the hotel staff. There was also a clueless-looking Sophia, unable to understand what was being said. The explanations were in English, but the murmurs around were in French. Sophia had majored in French in college and could converse decently, perhaps. But after about a 20-year, it seemed she had completely lost her ability to understand French. Picking up whispers from the surrounding staff, it sounded like they were discussing that these were the people expected at today's wedding. Actually, we had instructed the staff accordingly. If these people said they were here to attend the wedding, let them in, if not, and they were just for dining or staying, then no. Because we had booked the whole place for our wedding. The wedding was a great success, and my daughter and her husband and I left that day for Italy from an international airport in France. We had no intention of returning to the US. On the other hand, they were so angry that they decided to return to the US from the same international airport. However, they were stopped right there. This was because the credit card that Kevin was carrying had become unusable. Moreover, the staff who had been following them managed to capture all this on video footages. "What? My credit card doesn't work? This one too?" "Yes, sir. The card isn't even in your name, is it?" "Yes, that's right. Kevin had taken my credit card and my bank's debit card, so I had them blocked." That bank account is for my personal assets. Yet Kevin had accessed it. I was just pretending not to notice. Because I knew that doing such a thing would eventually come to light. I had another account set aside, which I could use freely, so even if funds were reduced from one, it didn't impact my lifestyle. I overlooked it to gather evidence. Damn, why have they stopped working? Of course, because the owner has blocked them, right? If you say that, I can't go home. I don't have that much cash on me. The exasperated staff sighed and said, anyway, these cards are no good, so you cannot board the flight to the US. They then drove them away from the airport. They reluctantly returned and apparently went to the consulate of US to borrow money to get home. It took a considerable amount of time to reach that decision though. It seems they didn't immediately think of relying on the consulate. Moreover, because it was embarrassing, they tried borrowing money from acquaintances, which also took some time. When they finally realized that hey, can't borrow money from them, they asked the embassy for help. They had already passed their planned period of stay and could no longer afford to be shameful. Eventually, they were thoroughly scolded at the consulate. After all, the reason was that the credit cards were blocked. They were judged their actions inappropriate, and they were even detained a bit. And with great difficulty, they finally returned to the US, repaid the travel expenses to the consulate from their own account, and came home to complain to me, only to find nothing left. At that moment, the sight of them was just too much to hold back laughter. What is this? Kevin yelled in front of the empty home. And his parents dropping their bags. Our house had been built nearly 30 years ago by my parents when we got married. It was always well maintained, so it could have been sold if we wanted to. But it was under my name, and thinking of living in Italy, I wanted nothing left there. So, the items clearly belonging to Kevin were stored in a storage unit, and everything else was disposed of by a disposal company. That was another phone call I made on the day of the wedding. What the heck is going on? Kevin scratched his head, stomped around, and finally fell to his knees, pounding on the suitcase. I couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight. Then Anna came over, hearing my laughter. What happened, Mom? Look at this, Anna. Your father's made a spectacle of himself. He's no longer my dad. While saying this, Anna gazed at the screen I was pointing to. In the screen, in front of the now vacant land with a for sale sign, it was completely cleared. That's where our house used to be. Completely empty now. Anna said with a wry smile. When she became an adolescent, she thought her father, who was always more protective of her aunt than she was of him, was just disgusting. I know she always talked about wanting to cut off the relationship with him quickly. It's nice to see your daughter is also pleased. So said the lawyer. Thank you for the fascinating footage. But there's more to it, isn't there? I asked. Oh no. That's not all. The lawyer gave a sinister smile. Next is this. And there was Kevin, scowling in frustration at something. What does this mean? The sound of him slamming the table could be heard. It means that your wife, Linda, asked you to file divorce. Linda would never say such a thing. How can you be so sure? Kevin started to say something but then seemed to have realized. That's right, the credit cards. Why on earth did she block the cards? Kevin muttered, to which the lawyer replied matter-of-factly, it's obvious, isn't it? Anyone would do the same if they knew a large sum of money was being used from their account without permission. Why were you using Linda's cards in the first place? Didn't you have your own? Then Kevin muttered and fell silent. Or perhaps you didn't have enough money to live for? We had already looked into that. Honestly, there wasn't much money in Kevin or his parents' accounts at the moment. Just a little for business expenses, and he had been spending the rest from my savings. He took my cards under the misguided interpretation that it was family money. I never gave him permission to use my cards. So, when I say I stopped them, that was all. And as a result of stopping them, we found out quite a lot had been spent. Spent? No, this is supposed to be our money, right? Not at all. What are you talking about? Were you not aware of this? The lawyer asked, sounding puzzled. What you were using was Linda's personal assets from before your marriage. From before the marriage? No, that can't be. Linda never told me that. She probably didn't feel the need to mention it. As long as nothing happened, it was fine. But something did happen, didn't it? What? Kevin stood up abruptly. Linda said she no longer sees a reason to consider you family. At least, your children no longer see you as their father. What are you talking about? That makes sense. Do you even know which universities your children attended, what they studied, and who they married to? And most importantly, do you know where your daughter's wedding was held? Kevin couldn't say anything. By the way, the lawyer then told him of the date and location of Anna's wedding. Kevin's expression changed drastically. No way, he muttered under his breath. Yes, the hotel you tried to stay at that day. That place? Kevin leaned forward. Yes. Didn't you hear there was a wedding there that day? Well, maybe, but at that time, the wedding. No, then why didn't they let us in? That's simple. The lawyer then explained what I had told the hotel staff. Linda had already told them in advance. Why did you check your phone? Haven't you checked at all? Or did you have another phone? Faced with these rapid questions, Kevin remained silent. Well, thinking about it, it makes sense why I couldn't get through to him. Kevin probably had some phones. And the one that I got the number of, he usually kept turned off. Since my messages never got read too often, I had suspected that. I asked if he changed his phone, he would probably have just given me a new number anyway. That's why I never asked. All of this was part of my plan. I have evidence that I sent messages. And I left voicemail many times. I made sure to make me look like I was getting more and more upset, like, are you listening to my voicemails? Are you listening? I want you to see my messages. Of course, the messages were the same. It appears that I tried other methods as well. Yet, Kevin had shut out everything that could connect to me. Therefore, the lawyer continued. Linda is also going to sue you for the money you spent without her permission and for neglecting the family. Oh. And I heard from her parents that they're cutting off the financial support to your company. What? Let me see Linda just once. Kevin pleaded, nearly in tears. No, you can't do that. Why? Where is Linda now? She's not in the US anymore. Kevin's face at that moment was unbearable to watch. After the wedding, Linda and the others immediately went to Italy. What? And you were detained, right? While you were stuck there, they made their way there. He was listening to it with his fists clenched and trembling. Anna, watching that, couldn't help but laughing. So, what do you think? The lawyer asked us. Are there any more entertaining footages? I asked. Yes, there are, the lawyer replied. This is a footage from a recent visit that your brother James and I made to the company. Right after your divorce was finalized and the corporate ties were dissolved. The lawyer said this and showed me another footage featuring my brother James. You're cutting off the support? What does that mean? Our company can't survive without your support. This time his parents raised their voices. Both their faces were sunburned, and they asked. Yes, I know, but what's with your face? Did you go on a trip somewhere? In the video, James was asking his father. To the wedding, well. Anna's wedding? Yes, that's right. Anna's. It was in France. James smirked. Actually, I was there that day. Upon hearing this, the two of them gasped. Of course, it was my dear niece's wedding. My wife and I both went to the wedding in Paris. By the way, we knew what you were doing on that day though. Sweat dripped down their faces. And yet, you didn't recall Anna's name just now. How uninterested must you be in those kids? James seized the moment to question them further. How can you not remember the name of one of your only 2 grandchildren? That's, well, they were never attached to us. Whether they attach to you or not isn't the issue. Have you ever done anything for them? The two were at a loss for words. But suddenly, there was the sound of someone barging into the room. Wow, heavyweight, amazing. How old is this person? Anna gasped, unable to hide her astonishment. The person who suddenly appeared on the screen was Sophia. Sophia is 42 years old. She's 10 years older than my husband.
Oh no.
She's parasite single. Indeed, that was a modern expression. Thinking about it now, she has been parasite single for 20 years. What will she do next? I then looked back at the screen. If the support is cut off, what are we supposed to do? What should I do? Sophia, not addressing the lawyer but her parents, pressed for answers. I don't know, her father could only mumble his words. Well, the divorce has been finalized, and as far as we're concerned, we have no reason to finance you anymore. What? Why did you let the divorce go through? Don't you understand yet? There are many reasons, but the deciding factor is surely the fact that you used my money without my permission. But that was supposed to be marital assets. James sighed deeply. Kevin said the same thing. Well, of course, we were concerned about that. Which is why we had already given Linda a lifetime gift of her assets before the marriage. Does that mean you didn't trust us? In fact, I have no trust in anyone who has spent his wife's property. Besides, how much and for how long did your son neglect his own wife and children? They were at a loss for words. Even I, their uncle, attended their first birthday parties. Of course, Linda also came to our house. Well, the fact that we stopped talking about such things probably means you weren't considered family a long time ago. James seemed to enjoy grilling them at this point. Yes, just as you mistook those three as a different family. Oh, right, Kevin said something on the day of the wedding when he called Linda. He said he was going to France with his family. Shocked, his father looked up, and his mother covered her face. Family, who was he talking about? With that, James directed a very pleased smile at them and Sophia. That completely sealed the deal. How did you like it? Thank you. I'm very satisfied. Please proceed with the next steps. There aren't really any more procedures to take, though. I exchanged a smile with Anna at the lawyer's remark. Later, the lawyer updated us. Sometimes James also got in touch. Their company, unable to receive further funding, was heading toward bankruptcy and ended up being absorbed by my brother's company. Saving the employees was deemed essential. They gave assistance to that company in the first place because they liked what the employees made. Not because the former in-laws ran a good business. I hadn't heard much detail from my parents, but James explained all that to me. And he had to give up his position as president. And they had to sell some property they owned and moved into a rental property. They seem to be struggling with what to do next. They've aged significantly due to the stress of the situation. And I've heard that health problems have surfaced as they were previously maintained by sheer willpower. Kevin is now making a fuss about having reserved a spot in a nursing home beforehand, as if it's a new idea. It seems financially difficult for them to get into one at this point. Kevin himself managed to secure re-employment at a company owned by his friend. His friend had let him into the company in one way or another, given their previous relationship. However, this divorce has made others realize that he is not a trustworthy person. Consequently, although he was initially hired as a full-time employee, his position was downgraded to that of a contract worker. This essentially means, make one wrong move, and he's fired. Though I find it lenient, I hope he keeps working there to repay his debts. As for Sophia, she is in a difficult situation. She is currently living in a rental accommodation with her parents. However, having been parasite single for 20 years, she really can't do much of anything. Even though their savings are running out, her parents desperately persuade her to find work, leading her to frequent the employment office. However, her job expectations are too high, making it hard for her to secure a job. That's to be expected. She's considering marriage, but of course, that's difficult as well. I can only marvel at what she's been doing all these years. Still, our life here in Italy is incredibly bright and refreshing. Living abroad certainly comes with its risks. Joe, who lives in the US, calls me worried, but I reassure him each time that I'm fine. When I told him to visit sometime and maybe bring a lovely wife with him, he got shy. As long as we choose a safe area to live, life is generally calm. Learning Italian slowly, getting along with other American families, and thinking about what to do next under the bright sunshine and dry wind makes each day enjoyable. There's a right timing to divorce. I wouldn't say my 30 years of marriage were all bad. But it's because I let go now that I can have a future. From now on, I want to have fun and be active with my daughter and her husband. Get out of here, now.
Yeah.
Hand over this house to us right now. This is my house. But if you really want this house, I'll give it to you. You'll see. My name is Catherine. I turned 60 this year. I divorced my husband when we were younger. My ex-husband had a terrible drinking problem and would verbally and physically abuse me. When he started hitting our children, I slammed the petition for divorce of marriage in front of him. Afterward, I raised our 2 kids on my own and put them through college. Now, I continue to work in floral arranging, a job I've been doing for a long time. A few years ago, I started offering online courses, which has been enjoyable because of all the new people I met. My eldest son, Michael, who has always lived at home, married a woman 2 years his senior. I thought he would move out, but he asked to live together. Since I had no reason to refuse, the 3 of us started living together. Michael's wife, Olivia, was quiet and not good at housework. She began to learn eagerly from me, and I thought she was a very nice girl. But now, her true colors are showing. She only acts rude and throws tantrums in front of me. In front of Michael, she behaves like a quiet and good wife. The housework I taught her consists only of washing her own clothes, and she does nothing else. Although it's supposed to be the house I've lived in for many years, I'm somehow being treated like a nuisance. Still, I'm trying to make it work with the 2 of them, who show no signs of leaving. But I never could have imagined how that day would drastically change my life. It was right after I finished an online course and was about to take a break. Suddenly, my eldest son's yelling echoed throughout the house. "Hey, old lady. We're out of shampoo. How am I supposed to wash now?" From the bathroom, yet his voice reached all the way up to my room on the 2nd floor. I was used to being yelled at by Michael every day. As I was not very quick on my feet, I brought him the refill shampoo as quickly as I could. "Here you go." "Sorry, I didn't notice." "You're too slow. It took too long after I called you. Make sure to check it properly next time." "I'll be more careful from now on." Michael didn't respond and just snatched the shampoo refill from me. At that moment, I accidentally cut the palm of my hand a bit deeper with the refill pack. Complaining would only add fuel to the fire. Sighing, I took a bandage from the first aid kit. Then Olivia spoke up. "What, did you hurt yourself? You're so clumsy. It's almost time for dinner, isn't it?" "I'm hungry, isn't the food ready yet?" "It's that time already?" "I'll get ready quickly." "Maybe you could help me, Olivia?" "Huh? Why do I have to cook too?" "Just hurry up and do it yourself." As Olivia was about to leave, Michael came out of the shower. He sensed something was off between Olivia and me and interjected. "What's going on? Don't tell me you're bullying my wife, old lady." "Not at all. I just asked her to help because I hurt myself," I explained. Olivia, changing her tone completely, sweetly told Michael. I knew this pattern all too well and was already resigned. "Is that what she said?" "Hey, old lady. You know Olivia isn't good with housework. Are you kidding me by forcing her to do it?" "I wasn't forcing her. I just asked politely if she could help, and she refused, so I was going to do it myself." When I tried to explain, my daughter-in-law Olivia quickly wrapped her arms around Michael and countered. Somehow, because she hurt her hand, she said she couldn't cook. We're late eating because she wasn't working but sleeping, apparently. "What? What are you talking about?" "Yes, I did hurt my hand, but I never said I couldn't cook. And I really was working until just now." "Enough. Whether you said it or not doesn't matter now, but trying to make Olivia cook is a fact. You're the one at fault, old lady. Angry, Michael turned his back on me and headed for the living room. At that moment, Olivia, making sure Michael couldn't see her, playfully stuck her tongue out and followed him into the living room. Michael always took Olivia's side and showed no interest in me. Still, I was really having trouble with Olivia. If only Michael could see her true colors, our living situation might be different. There were several times when it seemed like her true nature would come to light in front of Michael. But Olivia is good at hiding it, and because she's so articulate, she's quite formidable. Then one day, my biological daughter, Emma, brought her husband, Jake, to visit. Jake is younger than Emma but very composed and polite. He's so capable that he's risen to a managerial position at a young age, and sometimes I think Emma doesn't deserve someone as good as him. Welcome, both of you. Come on in. We're home. There's nothing like being back at home. Mom, have you been well? Unlike her brother, my daughter wasn't prickly at all. The atmosphere around her was always somewhat warm, enveloped in a gentle air. When I showed Emma and her husband to the living room, I saw Michael and Olivia lounging on the sofa. As I was about to greet them, Olivia quickly sat up straight and adjusted her appearance. Then, with a forced smile, she began speaking to my daughter and son-in-law in a cloying tone. It's been a while. Emma, you look even more beautiful, don't you? And Jake, as charming as ever. Please, have a seat here. Olivia moved away from the sofa she had been lying on earlier and headed to the kitchen. Emma and her husband took a seat on the sofa and started chatting with Michael, and I too went to the kitchen. In the kitchen, Olivia was preparing coffee for everyone except me. As I bent down to get some snacks from a lower shelf, Olivia threatened me nearby. I didn't hear about those two coming. Are you messing with me? I'm pretty sure I mentioned it, Olivia. You ignored it, didn't you? Another excuse? Cut it out, will you? I'm about to make you regret it. Olivia swung her hand dramatically and tried to hit me. As I braced to protect myself, Emma came in. Mom. I was coming to help. What's happening? Olivia quickly retracted her hand. For the first time, I was stunned to see Olivia trying to hit me. Emma stepped in between us, shielding me. What was that all about? I hope I'm mistaken, but Olivia, you weren't trying to hit Mom, were you? Of course not. I would never do such a thing. Something was about to fall from the shelf, and I was just trying to prevent an accident. Right? Yes, that's right. Thanks, Olivia. I'll finish up here, so you go relax. I'll take you up on that offer, then. As she said this, Olivia returned to the living room. Her face was smiling, but her eyes were not. Remembering those cold eyes and the almost hit from earlier, I was filled with fear, my body tense. Emma looked at the shelf and seemed to furrow her brow, but I was too frightened to notice much else. Noticing how off I seemed, Emma gently rubbed my back. Mom, it's okay, now. It's just us here, and I'll protect you while I'm around. Hearing her words, I felt my body relax. I was grateful that Emma had come into the kitchen. If she hadn't, I'm certain I would have been hit. Thank you. It's reassuring to have you here. I'm okay, now. I forced a smile, but Emma saw right through it. You probably won't tell me even if I ask, Mom. So just remember this, if you ever need help, contact me immediately. I'll always be there to support you. Emma's sincere feelings reached me, and I nodded slightly in response. After that, nothing in particular happened, and we enjoyed a peaceful time. Before we knew it, it was evening, and since it was getting late, Emma and her husband decided to stay for dinner before heading home. Olivia started to offer her help with the dinner preparations, but Emma, having witnessed the earlier scene, told her to just take it easy. Perhaps because Emma had seen everything, Olivia obediently complied. Afterward, since Emma was capable in the kitchen, the dinner preparations went smoothly. Working on the meal together, amidst lively family conversations, I experienced genuinely enjoyable moments for the first time in a long while. When dinner was ready and we all began to eat, Michael praised the cooking. This is delicious. Emma, your cooking is the best. You're exaggerating. You're making me blush. But I'm still no match for Mom, you know. What are you talking about? No, really. Mom's cooking is incomparable because it's just terrible. I'm happy to have a good meal today. While Michael was insulting me in front of everyone, Olivia was the only one nodding and smiling. Seeing this, Emma and her husband stared at Michael and Olivia with serious expressions. The atmosphere suddenly turned sour, and then Emma spoke up to Michael. You seem to be mistaken, but Mom did all the seasoning. What? Don't lie. It's true. I just helped with the prep and other stuff. Thinking he had been tricked, Michael glared at me. Olivia's smile became strained, and I knew this was a bad sign. That's when Jake, who had been quietly observing, started to speak. I can see why you might be confused, Michael. The seasoning by your mom and Emma is quite similar, so it's understandable. Thanks to Jake, the tense atmosphere softened a bit. Although conversation was sparse for a while, Jake made an effort to start fun discussions and engage everyone, helping to ease the mood. By the end of the meal, the mood had become pleasant again. After cleaning up and seeing Emma and her husband off, a terrifying incident occurred. It was a time of fear reminiscent of my days suffering domestic violence from my ex-husband. Hey, old lady, you really embarrassed me today. Unlike his behavior when Emma and her husband were present, Michael started hurling abuse at me. There's no shame in what happened. Michael, apparently, you called them over to get back at us. I overheard her and Mom talking about it, Olivia lied. Olivia? Emma and I never talked about that. Shut up, old lady. Olivia wouldn't lie. Stop getting carried away. Then, suddenly, Michael kicked me. I rolled on the floor, unable to move due to the pain. Michael's assault didn't stop there. He came over to me and started kicking me repeatedly. As I struggled to breathe from the pain, I did my best to protect myself. All the while, Olivia watched and chuckled as if she was enjoying the scene. You're always useless, and it's infuriating to watch. I thought he said more, but my consciousness was fading, and I couldn't understand clearly. Eventually, Michael seemed satisfied and stopped kicking. Olivia, seeing my battered state, started laughing heartily. The fear I had forgotten from the days of domestic violence with my husband came flooding back, and I started to cry out of fear. Not missing this, Michael and Olivia started laughing even more. What? You're crying. I don't want to see an old lady's crying face. Right, Olivia?
Yeah.
It's kind of harsh, isn't it? I wanted to leave immediately, but my body wouldn't cooperate. Then, Michael and Olivia delivered the final blow. Old lady. Pack your bags and get out of the house today. Isn't that sad? But I guess you don't want to stay in this house anymore, huh? For a moment, the pain in my body seemed to vanish as my mind went blank. This house is in my name, filled with memories from years of living here. I had never even considered leaving. Got it? Pack your stuff within an hour and get out. From today, this is our house. If you understand, hurry up. Do you want to be kicked again? Faced with Michael's undeniable demands, all I could do was comply. Despite the pain that made it hard to move, I forced myself to start packing. Throughout the packing, tears of frustration wouldn't stop. At the same time, a sense of insecurity about the future and anger towards Michael and Olivia started to rise within me. For the first time, a clear anger towards them surged in me, and I swore to get back at them somehow. Once I finished packing, they threw me out without much conversation. As I wondered what to do next, Emma's face came to mind. I called a taxi and, desperate for help, headed to Emma and her husband's home. When I arrived at Emma's house, the lights were still on inside, so I rang the doorbell. Hearing my voice through the intercom, Emma hurriedly opened the front door. Emma looked shocked, and understandably so. Just a while ago, I had been unscathed, but now I was bruised, carrying large bags. Emma called her husband to help with my luggage and supported me into the house. They helped me out of my coat and laid me on the sofa. Seeing my grave condition, Emma examined my wounds. Her husband brought a blanket to ensure I wouldn't get cold and gently covered me with it. After assessing my injuries, noticing the bruised skin and a significant bruise on my head, Emma insisted on taking me to the hospital just to be safe. Although it was late and I didn't want to be a burden, I eventually agreed to go to the hospital after being persuaded by Emma and her husband. At the hospital, tests revealed that I had several fractures. Fortunately, there was no damage to my head, but I had to be hospitalized for a few days just to be safe. 3 days later, I was discharged and returned to Emma and her husband's home. I'm so sorry for all the trouble I've caused. I don't even know what to say. Don't worry about it. It's good it wasn't life-threatening. Can we talk about what happened after we left? I really didn't want to tell Emma. But with such severe injuries, hiding the truth wouldn't satisfy them. I told them everything, without holding anything back. All the verbal abuse and terrible treatment I had endured from my eldest son and his wife since we started living together were laid bare. Emma listened silently until the end. Her husband also listened from a short distance away. After I finished, I asked them a favor. I'm sorry to ask, but could I stay just for a few days? I'll look for a rental that I can move into immediately, just until then. I apologized deeply and pleaded with Emma and her husband. Then, to my surprise, they responded with an unexpected proposal. Mom, don't look so sad. While you were in the hospital, Emma and I decided something. Decided what? That you should live with us. Really? Are you sure? Let's live together. I never expected they would offer to live together. Overwhelmed with joy, I burst into tears. Thank you, I kept saying, and they comforted me until I could stop crying. After that, we agreed to live together, and Emma and her husband proposed a plan. They suggested making Michael and Olivia face consequences for their actions. But is it really okay to do that to my own son? Emma, won't you regret it? I don't forgive them, nor should I. I can't forgive them. Emma stated resolutely, and seeing her determination, I accepted the proposal. They told me to leave the details to them, and I trusted them completely with the arrangements. When the month turned, Michael contacted me. Hey. I didn't know there was still a mortgage on the house. What's this? I got a notice to appear in court. What's going on? I never said there was no mortgage. It's your house now, so you deal with it. Don't joke around. How am I supposed to pay this much? You built the house, you pay it off. I refuse. You know what's going to happen if you keep this attitude, right? You're the ones who kicked me out, so I don't know anything about it. You're gonna regret this. Michael spat these last words and then hung up abruptly. After the call, I realized my body was trembling with fear. But, reminding myself that I now had my daughter and her husband on my side, I managed to calm myself down. That night, I told Emma and her husband about the call, and they seemed to have expected it. Mom, just ignore any calls from now on. Emma advised, and I complied without question. Despite this, Michael and Olivia continued to call daily. Following Emma's instructions, I kept ignoring them until one day they showed up at Emma and her husband's house. I didn't hear the initial confrontation as I was conducting an online course. When the course ended and I headed towards the living room, I recognized the voices. Peeking in, I saw Michael and Olivia pleading with Emma and her husband. Please. We just need a little money. We would really appreciate your help. And what have you been doing about money until now? Weren't you contributing at all to the household expenses? Well, I paid for my phone and insurance, but I never gave money to my mom. Emma and her husband sighed heavily in disbelief. That means, along with the mortgage, you weren't contributing to utilities or food either, right? And after all that, you treated her like a maid. Hurled abuse, and then violently kicked her out. What abuse and violence are you talking about? As Michael faltered, Emma's husband spoke up. I agree with Emma. She was in terrible shape. She had to be hospitalized. What you did could be considered a crime. What? That's the situation, so you should leave for today. Wait. At least tell me where Mom is. There's no way we're telling you that. We're also going to sue you. Be prepared to pay damages. Thinking you can say whatever you want because we came asking for help? Don't mess with us. Suddenly, Michael stood up in a rage and lunged at Emma. Just as I was about to intervene by opening the living room door, Jake stepped between Michael and Emma. Michael was easily restrained by Jake, unable to move. Still yelling and thrashing about, Michael made Emma feel threatened enough to call the police. Shortly after, the police arrived and took Michael and Olivia away. After they left, I quickly approached Emma and hugged her. "I'm so glad you weren't hurt." "Thank you, Jake, for protecting Emma." The couple simply smiled and continued to treat me kindly, reassuring me. Since then, thanks to the detective Emma and her husband had hired beforehand and the lawyer they engaged, we managed to obtain a substantial amount in damages from Michael and Olivia. It was also revealed at that time that both Michael and Olivia had been cheating on each other, which had led to a messy situation. Now, they would have to face not only financial issues but also marital problems. Now free from Michael and Olivia, I felt safe to go outside, and gradually, I started to regain my spirits. Despite occasional contacts from Michael, which violated the court's no-contact order, each instance was handled firmly by our lawyer. One day, I happened to meet a former neighbor at the supermarket who mentioned that Michael and Olivia's daily life was plagued by endless arguments over money and infidelity issues. Olivia's true nature was exposed, leading to their divorce. They then put the house up for sale. According to the detective, due to police involvement, the court case, and the divorce, rumors spread throughout Michael's workplace. Prideful Michael soon quit his job. After being dumped by his affair partner, he is now working part-time but without a permanent home, spending nights on the street. As for Olivia, she had been living with her affair partner but was recently dumped. She's now seeking live-in employment, undergoing a tough reformation. She's forbidden from indulging in her beloved activities like nail art and lives a constrained life. As for me, I bought back and renovated our old house, where I now live with Emma and her husband. Emma, who has qualifications in aromatherapy and massage, and I opened a small shop on the spare land during the renovation. We both manage online courses, run classes in our shop, sell crafts, and offer by-appointment aromatherapy massages. Everything is going smoothly. Being able to work on what we love and having returned to a home that, although renovated, is still ours, fills our days with joy. The tasks that Emma and her husband took upon themselves, involving detectives and lawyers, were complex, but they managed everything, allowing us to achieve this peaceful life. Our relationship is harmonious, and recently, Emma shared the delightful news that she's pregnant. I'm looking forward to holding my grandchild and can't wait for the day. With more joys to come, I truly feel blessed. I cannot thank Emma and her husband enough. Thank you so much. My name is Linda, and I'm a 37-year-old stay-at-home mom. I've been married to Brian for 8 years. After struggling to conceive, we went through 4 years of fertility treatments. Finally, our dream came true. And to our surprise, it was twins. I was so overwhelmed with joy that I cried in front of the doctor. When we shared the news of the twin pregnancy, Brian was over the moon. My parents were obviously thrilled as well. The in-laws were simply surprised. Oh my. Not only George, but Brian too. I wonder if twins run in our family, exclaimed Susan. Indeed, that's the case. Coincidentally, Brian's brother George's kids are also twins. Unlike us, George and his wife had kids right after they got married. Their twin boys, now 4 years old, are quite the handful. Having twins is intimidating, so it's comforting to have someone to talk to who understands. As the due date approaches, I struggle daily with my growing belly. Managing a twin pregnancy is no small feat. It's a relief that they've grown this much without any major issues. Thinking about things like, these twins are already being so good to us even before being born, I somehow managed to get the housework done. What is this? It tastes like nothing. I try hard with the chores, but all I get from my husband are complaints. I'm sorry, I felt too sick to taste the food. What's that supposed to mean? You should be done with morning sickness and into your stable period by now. Stop moping around. There's no stable period in a twin pregnancy. Stop making excuses. You're a stay-at-home mom, you should at least be able to cook properly. And what about this messy room? My husband is angry all the time. He constantly complains and doesn't help at all. He won't even take out the trash. On top of a husband who doesn't care for his pregnant wife, I have another source of stress. What's with all this mess? Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you can slack off. I'm sorry. I've been feeling really sick since this morning. Really now, are you even going to manage giving birth properly? Remember, having the baby isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Yes. Understand? Then hurry up and make my lunch. My daily visits from my Susan is my greatest source of stress. She lives just a 10-minute bike ride away. She comes by around noon every day to complain and make me prepare her lunch. And then she spends the rest of her visit throwing out more insulting remarks before she finally leaves. Does she ever bother about what her husband needs? The daily aggression from Susan has reached a breaking point. I brought it up with my husband. Look, the due date is getting close, Anne. I'm thinking of going back to my parents' place. What? You're going to be admitted to the hospital before the due date anyway. You might as well stay here until the last minute. The birth is planned to be a C-section, so I'm supposed to be admitted just before the due date. That's true, but we never know when I might start feeling labor pains. And, honestly, it's been really hard having your mom come over every day. What's that all about? I explained to my husband how I've been suffering from his mother's daily visits. He knew she came by every day but probably didn't realize she stayed so long. He looked a bit surprised. Well, I think it's a bit selfish, but isn't that just because she feels comfortable with you? What? She's leaning on you. She probably thinks of you like her own daughter. Can't you be a little nicer? Well, before my belly got this big, it was manageable, but now it's just too much. Don't you care at all about this? I pointed to my enlarged belly, and he just shrugged his shoulders. Well, I guess it's hard to move around with such a big belly. Walking is hard enough with this belly. Yet your mom comes every day, complains nonstop, doesn't help at all, and makes me do all the work. If this continues, something irreversible might happen. Are you okay with something happening to our children? I definitely don't want that. Then please talk to your mom. If you keep neglecting me like this. I have my own thoughts on what to do next. As we talked, I got emotional and let out all of my thoughts. My husband looked shocked. What do you mean by that? Are you talking about divorce? If it continues like this, yes. I really can't take it anymore. If Susan continues to cause me trouble. If my husband remains on Susan's side. My husband noticed the seriousness in my eyes and sighed deeply. All right. Really?
Yeah.
Don't you believe me? It's not that, but honestly, I'm skeptical. It seems like he values his mother more than me. Then let's do this. I'll prepare a filled-out divorce form. What? If you ever feel like you can't trust me, just submit it whenever you want. Does that make you feel more secure? Yes. I felt somewhat reassured seeing his commitment. After that, he really did prepare a divorce form and seemed to have spoken to his mother. I didn't end up going back to my parents' home, but from that day until I was admitted to the hospital, there were no more aggressions from Susan. I then had a C-section and safely gave birth to our twins. For a while, I stayed at my parents' home, managing the hectic early days of childcare. But the learning curve for childcare, especially as a new mother, was steep. One day, my husband came to visit my parents' home. Isn't it time for you to come back home? What? It hasn't even been a month yet? It's already been a month. You've been neglecting our home too much, you're just playing around. Playing around? I don't have any free time. Twin childcare is hard, and since I gave birth at an old age, the recovery has been slow and painful. But I'm enduring it and taking care of the kids. How does being older matter? Many people don't go back to their parents' home. Stop being so spoiled and just come back home. He left with those harsh words. Didn't he come to see his children? My husband left after saying just that, without really looking at or holding our children. As I soothed the crying twins, sadness overwhelmed me, and I couldn't help but cry along with them. Not wanting to complicate our marriage, I ignored my parents' pleas to stay and returned home. "You're finally back. Do you even understand what it means to be a wife?" That was the greeting from Susan as I opened the door. She was standing like a statue, waiting for my return. Exhausted, I couldn't even muster the energy to respond and just passed by her in silence. "Hey. At least respond when spoken to." I ignored her and went straight into the house. I was speechless. This isn't my home. The mess was horrible, and I muttered that to myself. The kitchen was piled high with used dishes, leaving no space for cooking. The floor was covered with used clothes and empty takeout containers. All this after being away for just about a month. Susan, did you come here while I was away?" "I came over often. I was worried about my son struggling alone." "You came over often and left it like this. Worried about your son, while leaving this mess. This environment could definitely harm someone's health. And it's not safe for babies. As someone who's raised children, don't you know that? For now, I will put the twins to sleep in the somewhat better baby playpen in the bedroom." Then, I started cleaning. Phew, I guess that's it for now. Just as I finally got a break from cleaning.
Wah.
The twins cried out loud. There's no rest even for a moment. By the time I finished cleaning, the day was already turning to dusk. "Finally done? You're so slow." That's what Susan said as she sat sipping coffee. I had to suppress the urge to dump that coffee over her head. As I frowned while feeding the twins, she put down her coffee and said, "Oh, by the way. Starting this weekend, George's twins will be coming over. It'll be your responsibility to look after them." "Excuse me?" I was so shocked I had to pause before responding. After all, I couldn't understand what was said. "What did you just say?" "Like I said. George, our second son. His twins, we've decided to take care of them over the weekends." "What does that mean?" "We've decided to give George and his wife a break. You're just dealing with sleeping twins. So it should be easy for you to help out George and his wife." "I don't understand." I was dumbfounded. I'm not having an easy time at all. I'm so busy I barely even have time to sleep. Even when I was at my parents' house, I could hardly sleep. Returning home likely means it'll get even harder." What is she talking about? What do you mean busy? "I'm giving you a job since you're just a stay-at-home mom, you should be grateful." "That's impossible." "It's only impossible because you're inefficient. Don't blame your incompetence on others. Just so you know, this is already decided." With that, Susan left. Just like my husband, Susan spoke her mind and left without listening to my side. It's not the time to be impressed by the family resemblance. In a rush, I called my husband, who was supposed to still be at work. "What?" "I'm busy right now. Listen, your mother is saying something outrageous. She wants us to take care of George's twins on the weekends." "Oh, that. Yeah. You knew about this." I couldn't believe my husband was aware of this plan. "Why didn't you say no?" "Well, George's family seems to be having a tough time. The twins are a handful, they can't even go out to eat. And they hardly get any rest or time to themselves. Isn't that sad?" "It might be sad, but how does that become our responsibility? Why can't your parents take care of them? My dad and mom are old, it's too much for them." "Are you really going to push that on the elderly? You're cold-hearted." "What about me? I'm already overwhelmed with our twins. Babies just sleep, drink milk, and sleep again. That should be easy, right? Oh, and don't slack on the housework. I won't tolerate any laziness. That's the deal. If you refuse, then it's divorce." "How can you say that? Won't you help at all?" "Me? No way. You expect me to work on my days off after I'm already tired from work? You really are a terrible wife. This is hopeless. The conversation isn't going anywhere. My husband and his mother are the worst. I hung up the phone without another word. Despite the unreasonable conversation, my mind was surprisingly clear. I made another call to someone else. A few minutes later, after ending the call, I gazed at my sleeping twins. Their adorable sleeping faces gave me courage. My husband and Susan are always imposing their own needs over these adorable children. They don't have an ounce of consideration for me. To them, whether I exist or not seems to make no difference. I decided to cut off my husband and Susan swiftly and decisively. That night, my phone rang. It was from my husband. Hello? I just got home, why aren't you here? Where are you? I'm at my parents' house. What? You just came back home, why are you still at your parents' house? I did go home and cleaned up everything. It's nice and clean now, isn't it? I called you, didn't I? Why are you at your parents' house now? Because I'm tired of you. With that, I hung up the call and turned off my phone. I thought he might call my parents' house, but perhaps because it would be awkward, he didn't call. Instead, early the next morning, my husband showed up. Hey, Linda. You're there, right? What do you think you're doing? To my surprise, he brought his mother with him. The inseparable mother and son duo had arrived. Can you not make such a commotion this early in the morning? As I responded with a displeased face, they both pressed on, what do you mean by this? Get back home now. That's right, come back and take care of the house. What about my meals? They continued aggressively. I thought about telling them to go eat the grass in the yard, but it's not the right time to retaliate yet. I looked at them coldly and said firmly, my home is here. I'm not going back to your house. What did you say? Are you saying you want a divorce? Yes, I filed for divorce last night. You said it yourself, didn't you? Submit it whenever you think it's necessary. You even repeated that yesterday. That was just a figure of speech. Who would actually take that seriously? Well, I did. My husband was speechless. Linda, you must be out of your mind because of a postpartum crisis or something. Re-register your marriage and come back. If you fulfill your duties properly, I'll forgive you. His mother tried to persuade me in his place. You want me to come back and take care of your needs and on weekends take care of George's twins, right? I asked, to clarify her intentions. Of course. I refuse. What did you say? First of all, has anyone ever told George about this plan for me to look after his kids? What? George doesn't know that I'm supposed to be taking care of his children, does he? At that, Susan's face went pale. That's right. It turns out, the idea that I would take care of George's twins was something Susan had decided on her own. In fact, after my conversation with my husband last night, I called George. When I explained the situation, he was very surprised. You're already busy with your own twins, right? I have no intention of burdening you with our kids. Sure, it's tough taking care of our twins. But they are incredibly dear to us. If we left them with someone else on weekends, we couldn't spend that time together with our twins. So it was all just Susan assuming based on a casual remark from George that taking care of twins was difficult. Then, she decided to take care of the twins on her own. And then, she tried to push that job onto me. An utterly confusing way of thinking. The divorce is already proceeding. Can you please leave now? That's unacceptable. My husband persisted. Enough already. Suddenly, a serious voice came from behind me. I turned around to see my father standing there. What? He looked flustered. You've been saying some very selfish things. Have you ever helped with the housework? Have you ever taken care of the twins even a little? My husband struggled to find words. I'm tired from work. Oh. Yet, I hear you don't really work that hard, mostly you're taking breaks. And although everyone else works overtime, I hear you leave on time. Yet you come home late. Are you having an affair? No, I was just hanging out. Oh. You leave all the housework and childcare to my daughter and go out to play? Quite the life you're living. Well, that's. In fact, my husband was employed at the company my father ran. It was a medium-sized business with a decent number of employees. In that workplace, my husband had been arrogantly walking around and slacking off because he was the son-in-law of the owner. This fact came out when my father conducted an internal investigation. I thought he was working hard late into the night, but that was not the case. You've exhibited too many problematic behaviors, so I'm going to have to ask you to leave the company. There's no reason to keep employing a stranger now that you've divorced my daughter. What? That can't be. Once you understand, please leave. You will be formally notified in writing tomorrow. Make sure to pack up your belongings from the office as soon as possible. What? At my father's declaration, my husband, now ex-husband, turned pale. As my father turned his back on him, and I was about to re-enter the house. My ex-husband took an unexpected action. He suddenly pushed past me, trying to enter the house. What are you doing? He was trying to reject my father's attempts to stop him. Move. If I take the kids, you'll have to come back with me. He was yelling something meaningless. Don't be ridiculous, are you trying to use your own children as hostages? Shut up. It's your fault for not coming back. He was desperately trying to force his way into the house. I clung to him trying to stop him. Susan was trying to pull me away with all her might. My father was hurrying to block the front door from the inside. It had turned into an unbelievable commotion. If he took the children now, it would lead to the worst possible future for everyone involved. I cried out as loud as I could, "Stop." Just then, I thought I heard the sound of a police car's siren approaching, and then it stopped suddenly in front of the house with a sharp sound. The police are here. Mom? It was my mother who had slipped past my father and rushed out. She ran up to the police officers who had just gotten out of the car and seemed to be explaining the situation. And then, why the hell? I'm her husband. I'm family. What's the problem with entering my wife's parents' house? I am this boy's mother. Why are the police involved? All right, let's continue this conversation at the station. My ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law resisted fiercely, but it looked like they were going to be taken away for questioning. My mother, who had been watching our interaction from inside the house, had sensed the threatening situation and called the police. Thank you, Mom. I had a bad feeling and called them, but I never imagined he would try to take the twins. What terrible people. To try to make me change my mind by taking hostages. That's the worst. After explaining everything to the police, we shared a wry smile. Later, Brian and Susan were released, but they were strictly prohibited from approaching me. After negotiations through lawyers, I managed to receive a lump sum for asset division and child support. Having lost his job at my father's company and all his money, my ex-husband ended up living a meager life in a shabby apartment, doing odd jobs. I knew this because he kept sending messages to my phone, repeatedly pleading and making excuses. I was wrong. I love you and the kids. What have I done? I've changed, can we start over, and if you just do the cleaning and laundry? I can forgive you. I can accept you. I'll be waiting. Despite his apologies, he ended up saying, I can forgive you, which is completely illogical. Of course, I didn't respond. I got fed up, so I eventually blocked him. I heard from George, my ex-brother-in-law, that Susan ended up moving into that shabby apartment with Brian. It turns out she had been divorced by her husband quite some time ago. So that's why she was coming to our place so often. The mother-in-law, who was always complaining to me, was actually incompetent at household chores herself. It seems that living together, Brian and Susan are constantly arguing. Sorry for the trouble my mother and brother caused. George apologized over the phone. George must have inherited the decent qualities of his father. Raising twins must be tough. Please feel free to reach out to me and my wife anytime. His supportive words were very comforting. After hanging up the phone, the sound of the twins crying echoed through the house. All right, I'm coming. Watching the twins grow, I felt nothing but peace and happiness. I'm done with you. You were stealing $1,500 every month from the money I was giving you, weren't you? When I got home from work, my husband, John, suddenly started yelling at me. I was confused and didn't understand what was going on, when John, his face turning red, kept going off. I just got a call from Kevin. He said you didn't give them any money as baby gift, and you didn't even send them the money I promised to support them every month. Have you been misusing the money I gave you all this time? Of course, I had been sending money to my son and his wife every month, and just today I gave them a sum of money as a baby gift. Why would they say they hadn't received anything? I did give it to them. Don't lie. No matter how much I denied it, John wouldn't listen to me. Listen, I'm not giving you any more money for living expenses. But if you bring the gift money to Kevin properly, I'll forgive you. If not, I'll divorce you. Fine, let's divorce then. What? Ignoring John's surprise, I left the house. Up until now, I have been desperately working part-time to support my struggling family finances. Despite managing both living expenses and sending money to my son and his wife, being treated like a thief was more than I could bear. I couldn't do it anymore with John, who just blamed without listening. And I decided to cut ties with my son and his wife, who easily lied and made me out to be the villain. With that decision, I left our home. My name is Mary, I'm 52 years old. I work part-time at a grocery store. I got married at the age of 22 and had a child right away. John works in sales at a beverage company and is often home late, so all the housework and childcare were my responsibilities. While my friends around me were enjoying their free time, all I had to do was raise my child and do housework. There were days when I felt beaten down. However, I desperately worked hard to do housework and raise my child because I chose this path for myself. My son, Kevin, moved out when he went to college out of state. Although he found a job in state, he started living on his own, which allowed me some leisure time. While I was living such a life, Kevin told me he had a girlfriend he wanted to marry. He's that mature now. I was deeply emotional and arranged to meet them at our home. On the day of the meeting, the woman he brought home was named Ava. She was very cheerful and laughed a lot. Kevin was smiling the whole time too. I was really happy that Kevin seemed to have found a wonderful partner. Both John and I wholeheartedly congratulated Kevin on his getting married. And things moved quickly, they got engaged and married. 6 months after their marriage, John and I were relaxing at home one weekend, when our son and his wife came to visit. Dad, I have a favor to ask you, could I ask you to send me some money every month? What's happening all of a sudden? The couple looked embarrassed as they spoke, and both John and I were taken aback. The thing is, we're thinking of starting infertility treatments, but we don't have enough money. Infertility treatments? Is that necessary? A lot of couples do it these days. We're hoping to have kids soon. I could understand how they felt. But they had been married for only 6 months. It seemed a bit too soon. People have children in their mid-30s nowadays, and Ava is only 30, so I don't think there's any need to worry so much. What if we can't have kids later? You had a kid early, so you can't understand how I feel to be 30 years old with no kids yet. Ava suddenly raised her voice loudly. Surprised because we didn't expect to be yelled at, Kevin also spoke up at Ava's words. Mom, she's right. You don't understand Ava's feeling at all. We're anxious, that's why we want to start fertility treatments as soon as possible. Dad, you understand, right? You want to see your grandchildren soon, don't you? I suppose so. All right, we'll support you as much as we can. Thank you. John agreed with the words of Kevin. If John was fine with it, it wasn't a matter of me. Just as I was thinking this, John said something shocking. Then, give Kevin $1,500 from our living expenses every month. What? From the living expenses? That's impossible. John gave me $1,000 a month. From that, I had to pay the mortgage, John's car loan, and our living expenses. There's no way we could afford an additional $1,500 for their support. However, John glared at me sharply. What? Haven't you been saving any surplus from the living expenses? Don't tell me you've used it all up? That's not it. But there's no way we can afford it with the loan repayments. No surplus? Managing our finances is your job. You're really useless. It's all your wasteful spending that's making us short on money. I won't pay any more than this. John wouldn't listen at all and went back to his room. I couldn't believe it. It was hard to save even $1,000 monthly, and then we had to send money from our savings. But once John started talking, he didn't listen to anyone at all. I was stunned, but my son and his wife glanced at me and stood up. Then, "Mom, please take care of it." Saying this with a smirk, the two of them left the house. Even if they asked me to take care of it, there was nothing I could do. I started working part-time at the local grocery store. Every day was a struggle with the new job, but I was desperate to manage both living expenses and the support for my son and his wife. And finally, by adding my own earnings, I managed to cover both living and support costs. Yet, as John regularly went out for drinks, claiming it was for networking and returned home late, my stress built up. Life would be so much easier with that money. Saying so only led to a fight. I had no choice but to persevere without relying on John. 6 months later, I unexpectedly ran into Kevin's childhood friend, Samantha, at work. "Mary. Long time no see." "Oh, Samantha. How have you been?" As we exchanged greetings, Samantha smiled kindly. "By the way, Kevin's doing really well, huh? Did he get a job at a great company?" "Kevin? He's working for a local company, just a regular guy." "Really? I thought he was making good money since he's been on a lot of vacations abroad lately." "Vacations abroad?" I looked puzzled, and Samantha pulled out her phone. "Yeah, you can see here." I was so jealous of all the pictures he had been posting on social media. Samantha showed me many photos that looked like they were taken at a luxury resort hotel abroad. The buildings and scenery around them in the photo were clearly not those of the States. There were many more photos on the site, and it looked like they had been to several countries in the past few months. There was no way they had the money to travel abroad, since they were saying they were short of money because of fertility treatments. Determined to find out the truth, I headed to my son and his wife's home. "This social media account is yours, right? Why have you been traveling abroad? Where did the money come from?" "That. My son and his wife looked at each other uncomfortably. "We just got lucky. We entered a sweepstake, never thought we'd actually win." Yes. Ava is just really lucky." "Really? Isn't it strange to win so often?" "Not at all. It's really just luck." My son and his wife were clearly flustered. I couldn't help but think, are they just fooling around with the monthly support money? "I see. How's the fertility treatment going?" "Oh, it's going well, of course. We really appreciate the help." "Which clinic are you going to?" It's the fertility clinic a little farther away, right?" When I asked about the treatment, they fumbled and didn't provide any details. Normally, insurance would have covered some level of infertility treatment. Yet, do they really need $1,500 every month for that? I can't imagine what kind of treatments would cost that much. My doubts about my son and his wife only deepened. About a year later, my son and his wife finally had their first child. It was a beautiful baby girl, and both John and I were thrilled. However, John was too busy with work to visit the hospital. So I went to visit them alone and gave them a gift on the birth of their baby girl. I had to think about what we were giving them all by myself, and after much thought, I decided to give them a gift card. Considering the expenses they would face, a gift card would be practical. At the hospital, my son happily held the baby. "Kevin, Ava, congratulations. Here's a little baby gift for all of you." "Thank you. Is this a gift card?" "That really helps." "How much is it for?" "It's $3,000. You can use some of it for your baby." $3,000? When I mentioned the amount, their faces fell. "Is something wrong?" "No, it's nothing. The sudden coldness in my son and his wife's attitude was puzzling, but I had to head to my part-time job now. I wondered if I had somehow offended them as I left, feeling uneasy. When I got home, surprisingly, John was already there. And he started yelling right away. "Hey, I thought you went to see the baby today and gave them a baby gift." "Yes, I did. Don't lie." I couldn't understand why John was so furious, and as he continued, his face turned red with anger. "I just got a call from Kevin. I heard that you didn't give him a baby gift, and you didn't send him money every month as well. You've been doing whatever you wanted with the money I've been giving you. What are you talking about? I gave the gift and sent money to them. I'm disappointed in you. Stealing our son's money." He was crying that they felt uncertainty because they couldn't get the fertility treatments. "Aren't you ashamed as a parent? You know what, I did send the money." No matter what I said, John wouldn't believe me and just sighed. "Listen, I'm not giving you any more money for living expenses. But if you bring the gift money to Kevin properly, I'll forgive you. From your own hard-earned money. You understand?" John's words cooled my head instantly. Why does he only believe Kevin's side of the story? He was convinced that he was right, talking down to me. I was fed up with John's arrogance. And I wanted nothing to do with my son and his wife, who so easily lied and tried to belittle me. I stood up, resolute. "Understood. I'll leave." "What? You're leaving?" "Yes. I don't need your forgiveness." John was trembling as he spoke. "Do you even know what you're saying? I might as well divorce you." "Okay, let's divorce then." Grateful that John was willing to grant a divorce, I left the house. 2 weeks after moving out, John was calling me every few minutes after work. I was about to block his number when he called again, and I accidentally pressed the answer button. "Hello, do you need something? Please communicate through a lawyer about the divorce." "Wait. It's not about that. Mary, please, let's have a talk." "What are we talking about?" "I don't want to." As I was about to hang up, fearing that things would get complicated, John, sounding frantic, spoke from the other end. "Listen, I just got all these bills today, for gas and other things, and I can't pay them. I didn't expect them to be so high." "Is that so? That's tough. Don't be so cold. You wouldn't think just gas, electricity, and water could cost over $300, would you? I've already spent all my salary and savings this month." I was speechless, appalled. Utility bills over $300 were not very unusual. It was a good-sized house there, and if he lived without thinking anything, it was only natural that it would exceed that much. Besides, he was the kind of person who would leave the water running when I told him to save it. The bills were bound to keep increasing. I didn't expect it this expensive. I said it was a rip-off at work and everyone laughed, saying it was normal. And I still have to make loan repayments. "How have you managed all this time?" "That's why I was working. I was the one covering the shortfall." "You were doing that for me." I had told John about my part-time job. But he probably thought I was just earning money for my own spending. "If only you had told me." "I did tell you. You just wouldn't listen." "I don't want anything to do with you anymore, so stop contacting me." I tried to hang up, not wanting to hear John's voice any longer. But he desperately tried to keep me on the line. "Wait. I'll listen this time. I want to meet and talk face to face. Can we talk at home?" "No, thank you. Don't say that. I am sorry. I should have listened more to what you had to say, and about Kevin's baby gift too. I want to talk with you and them together." "No, I'm fine. I'm too tired to go all the way to your house after work," I said, relaxing my tired shoulders. I went out through the employee exit, thinking I'd had enough and wanted to go home, but to my surprise, John was standing there. "I thought you'd say that, so I came to pick you up from work." I sighed at John's words. Now that he's here, I couldn't refuse to go home with him. I steeled myself and got into the car. When we arrived, my son and his wife were there, looking solemn. "Hey, Mom, long time no see. I ignored Kevin's greeting and sat down. So, what's this meeting about? I'd like to get back home soon. Don't be like that. I wanted to talk about the support money for Kevin and Ava. Mary, you said you sent it, right? Yes, I definitely sent it. At that, my son and his wife raised their voices. No, that's a lie. We really haven't received anything. Can you still say that after seeing this? I took out copies of the bank statement from my bag and showed to them. It was firmly stated there that the money was wired to Kevin's account.
Oh no.
This is... Kevin, what's going on? Ignoring Kevin's stammering, I took an envelope out of my bag. Inside, there was a detailed record of my son and his wife's activities over the past 6 months. Kevin and Ava, you guys have been on numerous vacations abroad, right? And you didn't get any fertility treatments at all. Didn't you just want money to have fun, anyway? What is this? Here's an investigative report from the detective agency. You have traveled abroad 4 times in the last 6 months. You must have a lot of money to spare. Kevin and his wife started sweating profusely. Across from them, John's face was turning red. You deceived me. Shame on you for deceiving your own parents. Give us back the baby gift we gave you. We don't have that money anymore. We had no choice, we were short on cash. Kevin realized that there was no excuse for John's words and began to talk back. We just overspent and were struggling with the repayments, and yet the baby gift was only $3,000. I thought I could get a little more if I pretended that mom didn't give it to me because it wasn't enough. I can't believe you would even lie to get money from us. I will not have anything to do with you guys from now on. Don't contact me at all. It's just a little lie. It's not a big deal among family. I was stunned by Kevin's justification. Did they not know that if he lied and got money from us, even if we were his family, it would be an act of fraud? We're facing tough times ahead. We want to build a house. We're family, so you should forgive this much. No way. You are disowned. Wait, please. It's true that Kevin did something wrong. I'll talk sternly to him, please forgive us. Ava then spoke up, to which Kevin turned on her. Why is it all my fault? It was your idea in the first place. What? Don't make things up. You were the one who said, if we say we need money for fertility treatments, they'll give it to us. As they began to argue, John clenched his fists in anger. Enough. Both of you are to blame. Never come to see us. John was visibly furious, his legs shaking with irritation. They must have been expecting to continue receiving financial support. The son and his wife had to look down silently and disappointedly. I was wrong. I should have believed you. I apologize, can we start over? John then turned to me and apologized. I had never received an apology from John throughout our marriage. Perhaps the old me would have forgiven him just for the apology. But now my love for John was gone. No amount of apologies will change my mind. I've already filed for divorce, so we're strangers now. Don't say that. It's been hard managing the household chores since you left. Look at this mess, isn't it terrible? Indeed, the kitchen was littered with trashes and there were plastic bottles scattered on the floor. Drugstore bags were strewn everywhere, a stark contrast to how it was when I was around. And? You want to drag me back to take care of the house? I'm not a maid. Of course not. But I can't manage without you, Mary. All I could do was sigh at John for being so selfish. It seems I had always been just a convenient housekeeper to him. I can live without you. In fact, I can manage better on my own, I said confidently. But, if you're only working part-time, the income isn't that great, right? You might struggle, he replied, concerned. Living alone is far easier, actually. I don't need to pay rent since I live in my parents' home. Unfortunately. There's no benefit for me to continue living with you, so I'm leaving, I explained, making my stance clear. As I stood up, John grabbed my arm. Wait. I'm really in a tough spot. The gas and water have been shut off. I can't make it on my own. Why are you out of money? What did you spend it on? Since you left, I thought $500 was enough for living expenses, so I spent the rest on horse racing. At that, John hung his head in shame, and I was utterly dismayed. This was the result of doing whatever he wanted because he thought he would be able to save money on food and other living expenses with me gone. I had no obligation to help him. If it's really that tough, why don't you ask your own son for help? The bond between husband and wife may be severed. But the parent-child bond can't be, right? We don't have any money as well, it's impossible. It's exactly because I gave you the baby gift that I'm short on money now. Pay for these living expenses. I told you, no more baby gifts. I sided the argument between John and Kevin. Feeling that it was pointless to stay involved with these people, I left the house while they were still arguing. I blocked their calls and cut ties completely. Later, I heard that John, having had his utilities cut off and unable to manage on his own, moved in with Kevin's family. He must have realized that he could not live on his own after all, even though he had made so much fuss about disowning his son. Cover your expenses for food. I had been supporting you, so now is your turn to help me. Apparently, they were spending their days arguing. John probably thought living with his son and daughter-in-law would help him save on living expenses. Even after receiving some income, he didn't move out, and eventually, I heard he sold his house. He spent all of that money on horse racing, too, and he was truly irredeemable. I was so glad I divorced him before his gambling addiction worsened. Ava would have been the one, most bothered by living with her father-in-law all of a sudden. She was forced to do all the housework, and dealing with her nagging father-in-law was quite stressful, and she was posting nothing but complaints on her social networking account. This is something I learned from Samantha, Kevin's childhood friend. Ava wanted to divorce but couldn't make the move because she had a little kid and had no job, leaving her unable to support herself. She just kept accumulating stress. I felt sorry for her, but she got what she deserved. Because it was Ava who proposed to get money for the reason of infertility treatment. She deserved it. Right now, I'm on a vacation. Until now, all the money I earned by working hard had been used up by living expenses and sending money to Kevin. But once I became single, I was able to save that money all at once. I've lived my life prioritizing my family until now. So, from now on, I intend to spend my money and time for myself. Life is still long, and I want to enjoy it to the fullest.